everybody. Welcome back. Dizzo's Den podcast edition. We're going to be back bi-weekly throughout both the football and basketball season with some interviews we think will be entertaining, interesting, informative, all the kind of I's and E's that people like to listen to. And today's podcast, we're focusing on sports broadcasting and television rights. Big deal here over the last 4 to 5 weeks in the area with the Summit League getting its new television deal with the CBS Sports Network for select regular season games, and the Summit League basketball tournament championship games moving to CBS-SN. The Missouri Valley Football Conference announcing its new deal with ESPN that they will televise regular season games beginning in the fall of 2024, and how that's going to impact not only the league but also the local television distributors, WDAY clearly being one of them for your home for North Dakota State football. And you'll hear from ESPN themselves. Dan Margulis will join us, who's the Senior Director of Programming and Acquisitions. It's a fancy title. He's the guy who decides what airs when it's related to college sports programming. He was the main guy that decided to move the FCS championship to a Sunday and on ABC, which they are going to do again in January of 2024. We're going to talk to him about that decision and about negotiations with the Missouri Valley Football Conference and ESPN. How many games could possibly on? What games could be possibly on? I think it's intriguing stuff, interesting stuff that I think our listeners and viewers that watch Hot Mic or watch Bison football, Missouri Valley Conference football, will be interested in listening to. So first up is Missouri Valley Football Conference Commissioner Patty Viverito about the deal that went down with the league. And then you're going to hear from ESPN's Dan Margulis about the contract with the Valley and the FCS championship game returning to ABC for January of 2024. Here's Patty up first. We were chatting in Frisco about this deal. I know it's been a long time coming. Give me your view on this and just having it done and what it means for the league.
It's a milestone. It's really important. This is the first time we've negotiated a television contract completely independently with the Missouri Valley Football Conference, and we set out at the beginning with several goals, and I'm really happy to report that we achieved all of them. So we're delighted with the outcome, and it's really important to have this set up with the industry leader, an opportunity to broadcast our game.
Patty, to my knowledge, you know this better than anybody, first time to have regular season games on network television during the conference schedule. How big a deal is that, knowing some of your colleagues, contemporaries have games on ESPN or CBS or wherever, to get the Missouri Valley now to have that same kind of exposure?
I think I can say with great enthusiasm that was a big part of our definition of success. No doubt when it was announced last year that the Big Sky agreement with ESPN included linear, anything short of that for our league, we think would have been a misstep. And we're really happy with the outcome that we're going to have, upwards of 1 or 2 games a year in this 6-year agreement.
I have to ask, just as a media rights holder that we are, how does this get determined what games get picked? Is this combination between you at the league and ESPN? How does that process go about starting next season?
We've had a great cooperative arrangement with ESPN on how we select our 8 exclusive games from the outset, and this is our 9th year in our arrangement with ESPN, broadcasting our games on ESPN Plus and ESPN3. And Mike Kern has had a really good working relationship with the people at ESPN, and he developed a slate of games. And I can tell you that over the last, 9 years of this agreement, we've always come to terms in a way that our membership supported fully. And that's really been how we've managed this in the past, and we expect the same to be managed going forward. I think the difference is that ESPN is going to be far more motivated to pick the most visible games, for the national broadcast.
So I anticipate that's a North Dakota State, South Dakota State. I think for our listeners and viewers that's probably goes without saying.
I'd be surprised if that wasn't going to be on the top of their wish list, or games like that.
Monetarily wise, I don't know if you want to get into specifics. How big a deal is this for the league, and then how does it get dispersed? Will it get dispersed to the individual schools?
Well, we're not able to disclose the financial terms. That's part of our arrangement. I will tell you that we managed to increase our revenues significantly, and it'll go a long way to underwriting our production expenses for the 8 exclusive game package that we currently are required to deliver.
I am interested on just having this and when, because as you well know, real estate TV windows are hard to come by on Saturdays. Is there a potential that you could see a Valley game on a Thursday or a Friday on ESPN because that's when they have the availability to play?
Part of the agreement is that we'll work cooperatively and that we'll consider non-traditional windows. I don't think we can overlook the possibility of trying to land something in the week 0 window. I think there's room there, and I think that it would be great, even if, not necessarily a conference game in that window, but I think we have some non-conference opportunities that would fit really well. Maybe even games that we create for that window. I know there's a lot of interest in the Big Sky Missouri Valley Football Conference Challenge. I think that's an avenue we might pursue jointly with the Big Sky to see if there's some games that make sense in that space. So would we be willing to look at an occasional Thursday or Friday game? Yeah, but it would have to be one that would be embraced by our campuses.
On the week 0 conversation, when you say that with ESPN, is for this deal, is it exclusive for conference games, or they could pick a non-conference game as well?
It would have to be cooperatively if we looked at a non-conference game, but no, non-conference games aren't off the table.
Okay. How big of a relief is this to have off your shoulders? I know this is one you've been working on a while, to have this over and done with.
I will tell you that if the process would have been arduous or difficult, perhaps I'd be more relieved. But, we had great partners in negotiating this deal with Leona, helping us every step of the way. And it's been a very amicable and cooperative and results-driven process. And it took longer than I would have hoped, but it was worth waiting for.
I could see on the NCAA website, Patty, they've basically confirmed that January 7th is a Sunday, the FCS championship game. I know you and I have talked about this. You've talked with ESPN that they're going to do this again. I know it doesn't come as a surprise to either one of us, but for our listeners and viewers that are, I'm surprised they're going to do this again. What was the feedback that you received from ABC and ESPN about the game this year and moving forward with doing it again on a Sunday?
Well, the elephant in the room is, going up against the NFL.
Right.
It's never a good idea. But, finding a space in that weekend that doesn't involve going up against NFL is nearly impossible now with how they've expanded their playoffs. However, I can tell you that ESPN was extremely happy with the ABC game last year on Sunday, and they want to stick with it. They think that this is a game, this is a property that's worthy of network television, and ESPN was happy with the results, as was ESPN. And I think the committee embraced it much more this time around with this decision than the skepticism that we faced last year when they made that decision.
Moving forward, is that a possibility you could see? I don't know, it's permanent, but you could move forward with that as, okay, this is going to be our niche is Sunday for the championship game?
Possibly. I think we have to wait and see how the college football playoff, MCS, or FBS playoffs play out. If CFP is in a different space with lots of games, chances are we'll need to work around that. But we don't even know moving forward who's going to own those rights and what we'll be up against. So let me say that's not at the top of my list of things I'm worried about.
Well, I will ask, though, just as on a whole general picture, going back to week 0, and I know how much you're involved with the oversight committee, do you get a sense in a few years that week 0 will become basically week 1, that last weekend of August will be the start of the college football season? Is there a trend to do that?
There was a lot of speculation when CFP announced that they were going to expand their bracket for their playoffs to 12 teams, that somehow to manage that date-wise, that they move into week 0. I can tell you that speculation has sort of quieted down. I'm not sure there's support in FBS for making week 0, week 1 for everybody. And so I don't anticipate that change, but it's certainly not off the table for consideration.
We're here. It's the start of the season. You mentioned before we got going, you're on your way to Youngstown. Just what are the emotions for a commissioner? You've done this for a while, but week 1 is here. What are the emotions like for opening night tomorrow night?
It never gets old. I will tell you that I look forward to the start of the season, and really a highlight of my duties is to have the opportunity to visit each and every one of our campuses and meet with presidents and athletic directors and enjoy a game. And the non-conference games are especially fun because I get to cheer. I get to have a rooting interest. So I cherish the non-conference games, especially in the playoffs.
Patty, this was awesome. I know you're traveling. Thanks so much for giving us a few minutes, and look forward to seeing you down the road, okay?
I'll be up there.
All right.
Thanks.
Dan Margulis from ESPN joining us. Okay, I got so much to get to. I always appreciate your time. Give us the backstory on the Missouri Valley Football Conference and ESPN, how this came about, and now culminating in a 6-year deal that you guys announced last week.
Yeah, I mean, we've had a great relationship with them for a while. Have done football, particularly digitally, for a bunch of years now, and it's been great working with them. And it was time to re-engage and talk about the future. And one of the things that was important to them was trying to get on some linear appearances in addition to the digital. And we felt that their performance warranted it. So we were able to put that into the deal and extend it further out. And it's always good when you can do a longer term deal, so you're not having these conversations every year, because that can get tedious at best. But they have great leadership there, great schools. Obviously, it's a staple of what we do with all our FCS coverage and getting into the playoffs. So we have, a good sense of what schools will do. So, it was as we were talking offline, it was a pretty easy discussion. The usual back and forth with any negotiation, but there's a lot of mutual respect there, and we really appreciate the partnership that we've had with them over the years.
I think, Dan, we have a lot of listeners and viewers that are pretty up to date on college football, and knowing that the TV windows, especially on a Saturday on ESPN and ESPN2, is not necessarily available for FCS football. Does that mean that these games can be played on a different night, necessarily a Saturday, that you could move them?
I think that's one of the discussions we'll have, since we haven't done it with them before, right? I think we'll learn together what works. Obviously, it's easier to do a special day earlier in the season when the schedules start getting laid out, as opposed to, say, doing it in the middle of October. But that's something that we'll discuss with the office and the schools and see what opportunities arise. Does not preclude us from playing on a Saturday, maybe one given week, if it's the right scenario, and maybe build them into a 12-day scenario. Who knows? We haven't done it yet, but I think it's designed to sort of find special windows that can stand out. The advantage of those, obviously, is that it's easier to schedule from our end, obviously not necessarily from the schools, but it also creates a standout window, right, where you're not competing with everything else that's going on that day in college football. But if we do that, we do that. So we'll figure it out.
I know the Big Sky, you have that advantage just because of the time slot of where they play, that allows for that. The Missouri Valley, you have most of, not all the schools, at least outside of 1 or 2, are in the central time zone. How much more of a challenge does that make for scheduling?
Make it more of a challenge, but, their performance has warranted it. So we'll figure out something. And, we've got some ideas. We're sort of, it's hard to look ahead when you're stuck in the muck, which we are right now in the season, right? So that's one of the things we'll come together with our college football team and with the Valley and find the best windows to do. And, creativity from some of the schools also helps. I think it's great when the student body gets involved. If you're playing on a special day every week, it makes it hard. But if you do it every so often, I think it makes it a special event. And we like to be part of that. And we've got so many success stories on all levels of college football to sort of show it.
Scheduling all this out, I mean, this literally takes about a year, right? When you start, we're just starting 2023, but you're already because the SEC is coming full on board for you guys in 2024. I know you don't even know the schedule yet, but you're starting to plan out exactly what we want to play when.
Yeah, I mean, anything we do, any sport, right? You're rarely living in the moment when you're in programming, which is where I am, which is not computers. It's actually scheduling. People don't always understand that. Um, is you rarely are actually, I mean, you enjoy the games that you're doing, but you're thinking weeks ahead, months ahead, seasons ahead, because we handle more sports than just, football. And so you're always sort of, trying to figure out, and it just sort of becomes nature. And you're right, there's some new scenarios next year that we'll just have to factor in that don't make this a repetitive process. But that's what we're paid to do. So we'll figure it out.
I know last year when you came on, we discussed the big story was the FCS championship game moving to ABC and to a Sunday. It's going to happen again. I just saw the ticket sales are going online today. The bunch of comments I had, Dan, from viewers up here. So, well, why would they do that knowing full well they had a good rating on Saturday at 11 a.m. on ESPN2? They had less people watch, but it was on ABC. You, the guy, make the decision. So tell us about why to go back and do it again this year.
Well, there's a couple of reasons. I mean, first of all, there's the event itself. And so do you as the event want to play Saturday morning at 10 local? Or, that's, and it's an experience. And if you've been out to Frisco, anyone who has been out to Frisco, it's phenomenal. And it's an entire weekend celebrating the game, right? So you play on Friday night, you're taking away from that. You play on Saturday morning, you're taking away from that. The NFL is all over Saturday now. It's you just can't avoid it. So yes, of course, I'm not going to sit here blindly like a robot and say, oh yeah, I don't mind going against the NFL, screw them. But at the same time, you have to factor in the event, and the rating was down. The game wasn't as good. The teams are great. You're relying, like anything in ratings. We love to take credit for it, and sometimes it is because of something creative we've done. But at the end of the day, Duke beats Clemson and Clemson doesn't blow out Duke. It makes a big difference in what happens. If that game's competitive at the end, the rating would have been better. People would have stayed with it. With less options to go to, and it still did a number that we're happy with, right? We're okay with that. And I think I said this last year, you can't just put up a gone fishing sign because you got something up against you, or else you'd never have anything on. So, we have a great relationship with the committee. We have a great relationship with the commissioners. Frisco, who hosts it, and we talk every year. And I think we talked about a lot of options. We didn't just say, okay, we're going to do this again next year. And I think when you go through all the different factors that go in, we still felt this was the best one. And certainly from an on-site experience, it'll be great. And being on ABC is never a bad thing. Let
me follow up with what you said. The rating number that you got? You and I talked about this. I mean, it's hard to predict it. You got the two teams absolutely in a dream scenario you would want. Was ESPN, was ABC, was happy with that number?
Yeah, I mean, we're okay with the number. I think, you're always happy when it's a record rating, right? So that's are we ever happy with anything? But we were okay. If we weren't okay with it, we wouldn't do it again, and it still did a good number. It did over 1 million homes. So we're good with what it does. So
how much was Friday brought back into the discussion of playing on Friday night by either you or the FCS playoff committee?
No, we talked about it. There's a couple of challenges. First of all, it would have been on ESPN2 if it's on us, because it's obviously we have NBA doubleheaders that night. And I think if you talk to some commissioners, they would have loved it. I think others, what happens is if you're, a North Dakota State fan, you don't get the weekend. You're just getting there for Friday for a start time that's probably, I don't know, 6 or 7 local, and then you're out of there, right? So you lose some of that. If we had an ESPN window, maybe we all would work to try to, but I think when you factor that in, it just made, certainly from my standpoint, and others may disagree, it made an even better case for keeping it on Sunday.
Did you get the sense from the commissioners how they were pleased with what they had happen on Sunday this past year?
Are commissioners ever pleased with anything? Yeah, look, we have what I appreciate about this group of commissioners, and we have relationships with most of them individually and as a group, is that they're always very direct and honest. And I think there's a lot that they liked about it. There's some other things that, they'd like us to work on, that they'd like the site to work on. It allowed for open debate to talk through all these things. So we're not dictating the date. At the end of the day, we decide the date, but it's not like, we say this is it, and leave the room and whatever. It was, we had a pretty open debate, and there's some commissioners who are more vocal than others, and I think even if it wasn't what they wanted, I think they felt like they were listened to. So that's all you can ask for. But I think we obviously at the end of the day we had consensus on it. So.
Dan Margulis joining us from ESPN, Senior Director of Acquisitions and Programming. He's the guy who makes the decisions of NCAA sports of when they're airing. I know you can't give me a whole lot on this, but I need to ask, where do things stand with the future television contract with the NCAA championships? I know the NCAA women's basketball is going to get its own deal. Can you give us any insight on FCS football and what that may look like in 2024?
I can't. We'll be discussing it. Hopefully, we'll be able to continue everything that we've done over the past and just keep growing the relationship. I think, I love working on the NCAA championships. It is, a passion project. We've sort of focused on various championships throughout the years that we've built. And, you're a victim of your success sometimes, because when you build something up, then you're negotiating off of something that's now a lot bigger than it was. I mean, our last deal was 14 years ago. So think about that.
I know.
But those discussions will happen over the fall. Like I said, we have a great relationship with them. It's our goal, obviously, to maintain and keep growing what we're doing now. But, we'll see what happens.
Dan, last week, 92,000 watched a women's volleyball game in Nebraska. I did the story in June when ESPN announced that the NCAA volleyball championship is moving to ABC. You and I talked about this last year of moving more stuff to ABC. Describe that decision and how popular this could possibly be of putting the volleyball title game on ABC.
Yeah, we're excited about it. I think, I don't know if we talked about it last time, but there's a lot of women's sports that we've been working on. And again, it's like any sport, like whether it's FCS or whether it's women's volleyball or women's lacrosse, passionate fans want it now, but there's a building process, right? And volleyball is complicated because it's in the fall, and likes to play on Saturdays, and there's something else that goes on there, right? So trying to figure out a way we love the sport. We're trying to grow it. We're doing more games on ESPN, ESPN2 this year than we've ever done. We've got Nebraska Stanford on ESPN coming up, which will be phenomenal. And I think, we saw how great the environment is on the championship. We have to do it on ESPN2 on Saturday nights. So it was an opportunity to try to move it to Sunday, put it on ABC, see how that goes, but keep the semifinals on Thursday. So, credit to everyone in the volleyball community for working with us, because that adds an extra day. But I think, putting the semis on ESPN, championship on ABC, we introduced a new concept this year for the early rounds called Fifth Set, which is a whip around show, which we'll add some linear windows to where we can. Again, the advantage of that is just like with any tournament in early rounds, the teams you may know the most are going to blow out other teams. Doesn't always happen, but so you can't bank on that. This gives you a chance to sample around everything, and we think that's the best way. And again, passionate people are like, why don't you just put that on linear? And there's a reason we don't. And again, you're never going to make everybody happy, but we listen, and we have a great relationship with the coach, with the ABCA, and that's when it keeps us with having elevated the women's lacrosse championship to ESPN, to putting the gymnastics on ABC, Women's College World Series on ABC. Yeah. It's been a big part of what we do is in the women's sports in the NCAA championship realm. In volleyball, again, you saw it at Nebraska. We've seen it at other things. It's an exciting sport with a really passionate fan base.
Well, I thought of you immediately last March watching the women's basketball championship game on ABC. You had you couldn't have asked for probably a better match of what you got. I'm assuming, is that happening again in 2024? What can you tell us about the women's basketball tournament for this upcoming?
I don't think we've announced our schedule yet, but I think I would expect it to be, the same kind of coverage, and hopefully we get the same kind of stories. I mean, again, the perfect event has the perfect circumstances, and that, the move to ABC's two transcendent stars and teams that were totally opposite going up against each other in the games that led up to it. It was really exciting for everybody.
You get a sense maybe is prime time a possibility? Can you hint at that for us for the women's basketball?
I'm not gonna hint on. I'm not. We like it. Did great. It did great, and we'll keep looking at it. And I think again, you have to factor in a whole bunch of different things, but it's a wonderful event.
I have an email to ask about the Missouri Valley game. So what is the potential for the linear games for 24? How many could you actually put on ESPN, ESPN2, ESPNU next fall?
Probably 1 or 2 games. It depends on what we can schedule. We can always do more depending on what happens, but I think we'll sit down with commissioner and the committee and their TV committee and figure out what makes the most sense. Certainly that first one you want it to be special, right? First time of anything. So we'll figure out the right date, team, matchup, all that stuff, and try to figure that out. And, we'll announce that probably around Memorial Day next year. Just take some time to work on.
Looking forward on this is the opportunity to get to, North Dakota State, South Dakota State. Is it beyond an easy question to say, hey, we're probably going to have that game? South Dakota State, North Dakota State makes a lot of sense for us to do.
I don't know. I don't know. Again, if we're looking early in the year, maybe it's a non-conference matchup that they're hosting, right? Those are always good because they bring in different fan bases. They like doing that. But we'll see. We'll see. We'll work and see what's the most creative and effective solution to, get the best possible matchup and, accomplish what the conference wants to do.
I really appreciate your time this morning. You've always been so generous with it. I'll leave with this. What's the next big thing for television sports viewers we should be on the lookout for? Where are you looking at? Say, okay, this is to get ahead of the curve. What are you looking at right now?
Oh gosh, we're looking at everything. That's why, that's what we're always doing. I mean, obviously, we're focused a lot in building our digital platform and how that supports and works and intertwines with everything. And in terms of my world, again, like I work on certain things, other people work on things, I spend a good part of my time working on how, like we just talked about, how we grow some of the women's sports so that there's a connection between the end and the beginning, because, that's the next step of it, right? And what's the best way to cover it?
Well, I'm not saying this because you've been on the show, but I always appreciate your time, and I love this stuff because I'm a nerd on it. And I really like to know the decision-making process. I wish you could have given us a little bit more intel, but I understand you gotta wait.
I have a job I'd like to keep, Dom, but if you want me back next year, you got to be nice.
Understood. I know you can't give away the company secrets on that. Have a great fall. Hey, you got a TV deal now. You got to come up to Fargo. All right.
I know. I'll let you know.
All right. So,
all right.
Stay cool down in Charlotte, bud. Thanks so much for the time and be well.
Thanks, Tom.
There he is, Dan Margulis from ESPN. We appreciate both Patty Viverito and Dan Margulis for giving us their time here in our first edition of Dizzo's Den, the podcast airing during the football and basketball seasons. Again, we're going to do this bi-weekly. You can check us out at inforum.com. You can check out past podcasts we've done, including interviews with now Tampa Bay Buccaneer Cody Mauch. You'll also hear from Kindred defensive line standout Riley Sunram about his commitment to the University of Minnesota. Much more of those kind of interviews and stories coming in the weeks and months ahead on our podcast. Thanks so much for listening, everybody. We'll see you next time.